could stay in that space. That's really what we need at the moment, peace. How good is that? And how good is it to have Reverend Dr. Sylvia Erickson? Would you welcome Sylvia? Thank you, Sylvia. Over to you. And unmute.
Can you hear me?
Sure can.
Good, good. Well, it was near the end of the 1950s when I first discovered the New Thought movement in America. I was very happy because after years of searching, I had found my God and my people, and I'd learnt the truth of my own being. To lose the sense of separation and to know that God expressed within me and through me, and that I am an individualized expression of God's power, was a wonderful insight, which gave me demonstrations of God also granting me all the desires that I had. Coming from a seafaring family, as a small child, I had always said, when I grow up, I'm going to sea. And everyone laughed and said to me, no, you're not. You're a girl. How can you go to sea? But I knew I was going to sea. And in September 1962, through a series of seemingly miraculous happenings, I was accepted as a stewardess on Swedish cargo ships. And everyone said, well, you're so lucky because Swedish ships are so clean. But when I started my duties on board, I found that I was the one that did all the cleaning. I scrubbed cabins, washed down walls, and cleaned everything in sight. I also served meals in the captain's salon to the captain, first mate, and chief engineer, sometimes a few passengers, and in some ports, captain entertained the local dignitary. So I served large parties and washed mountains and mountains of dishes. Going through the tropics without proper air conditioning made it a hard life at times, but I was glad that I was at sea and meeting lots of strange people who weren't strange anymore. They all seemed to be very friendly. Every day I had a few hours to myself between serving lunch and dinner, so I spent the time writing to my friends in Melbourne, explaining the truth principles and how much they had changed my life in wonderful ways. My enthusiasm sparked their enthusiasm, and they shared my letters with their friends, who also started writing to me with questions about the truth principles. And soon I was posting many letters each port and spending all my money on postage and typewriter ribbons. The postal systems in some countries could not be relied upon. And I posted a big bag of letters on entering the Suez Canal, only to have them delivered back to me as we left the canal. And I realised that I would have to wait until we'd crossed the Mediterranean Sea and post my letters in Gibraltar to make sure they reached their destination. I soon became overwhelmed as all the letters became too much for me to cope with. So I wrote a 2-page discussion topic, what is God? And I sent it to a friend in Melbourne to pass around to all my friends. And after 6 years at sea, I came ashore in Sydney with my new Swedish husband, and we settled in Mosman. And I immediately started a Science of Mind study group based on the writings of Ernest Holmes. I wrote discussion topics for every meeting until we outgrew my lounge room and moved to the Neutral Bay Citizens Room, where we met for 8 years. We then evolved into the Sydney Science of Mind Church, and I spoke from the platform and kept writing discussion topics. And as my name was listed in the Science of Mind magazine, I received many inquiries from overseas, and many people arrived on my doorstep. A delightful Japanese woman arrived and spent the whole day with me, and we discussed the truth principles and the fundamentals of the New Thought movement all day long. After 2 years, I walked away from our Science of Mind church, as I found that the minister sent to us from America was not conducting the church according to the truth principles we were teaching. I was still sending out discussion topics to my friends and inquirers, and after praying for guidance, I was led to an advertisement for Divine Science at Brooks Divinity School, Denver, USA. I was accepted by the school for ministerial studies, and after 6 years correspondence and a couple of trips to America, I was ordained in June 1998 in the First Divine Science Church, Denver, Colorado, USA. I had been attending Unity Church in Renown Street, and when the minister, Reverend Leila Thompson, heard that I was ordained, she asked me to present the service every fourth Sunday just to give her a break. So I presented my first service in February 1999. We worked very well together, and when Reverend Leila returned to America, I was voted in as interim minister until a unity minister could be found. I loved presenting the service every Sunday, sometimes helped by, now what was her name? Oh dear. By Jukes, that's right, the Lady Jukes. We worked well together. And when Reverend Leila returned to America, I was voted in as interim minister until a unity minister could be found. I loved presenting the service every Sunday, sometimes helped by Sylvia Jukes, who also presented some services. And I thrived on the many friendships I enjoyed with the friendly, supportive unity members. Reverend Rhonda Mary came down from Sydney, and she spent four years with us, and I continued doing the services every fourth Sunday. Then we had Reverend Bill Livingston as a temporary minister. Then a unity minister, Bob Wasner, was with Reverend Bill, and Reverend Bill was associate minister. Then unity minister, Mindy Tucker. Does anyone remember Mindy Tucker? Oh, good. Yes, there's some people who remember her. Then Reverend Bill Livingston, and we also had visiting unity ministers for short stays. Reverends Jack Bomar, and the wonderful Sky St. John, who unfortunately is now the late Sky St. John. He was lovely. Bill Livingston joined us in February 2000, and he played piano for our services and then began training with me as the Divine Science Minister. He was ordained in 2008. He became the minister soon after and spent time as Associate Minister with Unity Minister Reverend Bob Wasner, who returned to America, leaving Reverend Bill as our minister ever since that time, with me as Associate Minister. Reverend Bill has worked Sunday after Sunday for years, leading us all with his spiritual wisdom, giving classes and supporting all members who needed help. He continues to work selflessly, and we are truly thankful for his caring dedication to us all. When I walked into Unity in 1997, I had no idea that I would still be here 26 years later. During that time, I presented many classes. My Unity and New Thought classes were very well received every Monday afternoon. And I presented many services and trained 4 divine science ministers. 3 have been ordained: Reverend Bill Livingston, Reverend Jeanette Youngman, and Reverend Rev Youngman. And the 4th, Glenda, who is not ordained, as she is doing a wonderful job buying and handing out food and clothing to the homeless. And she is assisted by Anthony, a divine science member, and the buying of the goods is also funded by Divine Science Group. In June 2021, I suffered a stroke, which affected my memory, but when I came home from hospital and rehab, the first thing I did was to write some discussion topics: the still small voice and embracing change. I'm now recovering well, with more memory returning each day. When we continue to send out my discussion topics to our Divine Science member every 2 months. Dear Reverend dear Yvonne Polaki has been a great help to me for many years, dresses up my writings and sends them out for me. I appreciate all her help. I am now aged 98 years, and after sending out discussion topics for more than 60 years, I suppose I'll continue to write and send out discussion topics until I make my transition. And I wonder what God will call upon me to do when I enter the afterlife. And so I celebrate my 60 years of sending out discussion topics. Thank you.
Whoa. Thank you, Sylvia. That was wonderful.
Good.
A history lesson there. And my goodness, doesn't time pass very, very quickly? So now we've got a photo here. Have we got it there, Rod? It may need some explaining. It's it was taken after we had a jazz concert. So have we got that there, Rod? Where's Rod? Is he here?
Yeah, I thought it was going to come later. I'm just a bit there in half a sec.
Okay, well, the background of it was we had a jazz concert. And as you know, wonderful Beverly Sheehan, we've had a couple. And at this particular one, this was taken. There you are. That's the tuba player. And that was sent overseas to the International New Thought Alliance, and it went through to all the people there in the States, and it was captioned, Reverend Sylvia being inspired by Gabriel blowing his horn. And there he is. So that was a good concert that day. And so you can blame Beverly Sheehan for that, Sylvia.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, there it is. So
thank you.
Well, would you thank Reverend Sylvia for that? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Right. Now, before we go on to a song, I'd just like to remind you that the Power of the Month